to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Guest, and today I have with me someone who has taken his passion and love for family and culture and really cultivated it into something that we can all use, benefit from, and also connect with the times so that it's all online. Because if you're like me, you have all the albums de recuerdos. But Omar Álvarez is a founder of a company called KINNECT, and it's KINNECT because it's the kin, connect, and which is really lovely. But before I talk for you, Omar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's nice to verbally audio meet you. I'm Omar, and I'm the founder of KINNECT. I'm actually born and raised in a close town, very close to Nayeli, in Rosemont area called Franklin Park. So this podcast, this moment together is very special to me. I'm 32 and I'm a nomad with my husband. I've been working in tech the last 5 years, particularly working at Hims and Hers and also Reel. And prior to that, started my career bouncing around the West Coast at the headquarters of Nike, Levi's, Hilton. And now I'm able to kind of bring these moments of intersection together in building this product and brand.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you need to share your story because when we hear that someone worked at like Nike and Hilton and all those places, we're like, oh man, this kid had it easy, or how nice that you were able to get in. Tell us how you got that job at Nike.
Yeah, and thank you for remembering. Yeah, I am a first generation Latino. My mom is from Puerto Rico. My stepdad, who raised me, is Puerto Rican, and my biological father, who is present in my life now, is Guatemalan. So I really didn't have any of these connections from these Ivy League schools or institutions to get these big boy jobs, you know? But since I was in high school and I was running in high school and competing, I was so obsessed with Nike. I would rewatch their commercials. I would go on YouTube. I would just be rewatching their commercials, like those 20 seconds like of just entertainment. And I was just so motivated by them that it really encouraged me in my jobs and school. And it was like, this is the thing I need to do. So I did some research and I found that, unfortunately, and not surprisingly, Nike is really hard to work for and to get into. Shocker.
Yeah, they're not just like, hey, just come in, fill out this application. No.
Exactly. So I went to DePaul University in downtown Chicago. I was running cross country and track there, and I was doing some research to see like how can I get into a Nike's intern program. I really wanted to work there. I knew the intern program would be a great gateway. Unfortunately, I saw that they were scouting bigger institutions, Duke University, UCLA, those schools. They were not coming to DePaul, unfortunately. But I did find this Reddit thread, and this Reddit thread was someone talking about the program they had called Field First. And Field First is basically taking in people that work at the store location and then bringing them into the headquarters location. And it kind of provides that value of like, hey, you guys up here are talking about how they're going to interact with the product, but these are the folks that are everyday selling
it. They're meeting our consumer. If you think about when a consumer interacts with your brand, like wholly, it's when they have it in their hands, and you would know that because you've worked at the store.
You also get to like pick up on like people's like reactions towards like products, right? So there's like this really good behavior that I actually really do believe in that program. Anyways, I found out that in order to get into this program called Field First, you had to work at the store. And I was close to Nike Town, Chicago, pero I was already going to school. I was full-time. I already had like a side gig.
And an athlete.
I was an athlete. I was competing every weekend. My weekends were consisted of like running anywhere between like 16 to 20 miles on Sundays. Saturdays were our races. During the week, we had like doubles. So you would wake up and have practice in the early morning and the splits after class, sometimes at night. But, you know, I grew up with the parents that I grew up with, and being Latino, it didn't really like cross my mind that it's going to be to apply and take it. But I applied and got this job working overnights at Nike Town, Chicago. And it was brutal. finishing school, finishing practice, finishing races, and going overnight to reshelf the products. Anyways, it'll bring us to the coolest part now. At the end, I was like working, helping someone who was really excited about this pair of shoes that Nike had, particular to Chicago Bulls. And we only carried about like a limited quantity size. This guy flew in, I learned, from Portland all the way to Chicago to get these pair of shoes. It didn't click in my mind that this person maybe was coming
Yeah,
in from
from
Nike head.
Portland, yeah. Don't they have a Nike there?
Exactly. And then this guy is like asking for like all these like tips on these shoes, recommendations, sizing. Unfortunately, we didn't have his sizing, but I did a good job in upselling him to get the bigger size. And being that this guy works at headquarters and is the head of talent acquisition at Nike at that point. This guy
Wow.
was able to take my experience in working with him, hearing my story about me saying I'm crazy, working right now at overtime, shelving schools, going to school, et cetera, for this. But I really want to work at Nike. And then the world spoke, and I now have that on my resume.
You think about that, and we will get to your company because I really want to make sure we talk about that. But I want to talk about that experience though, right? Because you think about like you were just doing your job. And
Yeah.
sometimes if we're so laser focused on just getting the work done or doing it that, and that was a huge networking opportunity. That may have been one of the opportunities that changed your life
Yeah.
and, restructured everything for you.
You have no idea, right? You're just like,
Yeah.
just talk.
Just talk to people. And most times people are, right now I see like people that are on their phones all the time and their heads are always down. And I'm just like, talk to people. And I know right now, and the way this job market is right now, and there's hardly any jobs open. So you have to really be different or find different ways to connect and, value that network or those opportunities and take those moments to speak to people when they're with you.
Exactly. It is a weird time, right? Like we have so much opportunity to be connected to each other, the Zooms, the Slacks, obviously with
Yeah.
FaceTime, everything. And yet we're so disconnected and often feel so lonely from one another. And
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the biggest opportunities in the country and causes of mental illnesses, right? Is just this need of belonging that we are all seeking and don't really have.
For the longest time, the belief was you never make any decision when you're tired, hungry, and thirsty, right? Drink a glass of water, sleep on it, eat something, and then make the decision because it changes the makeup of your decisions and your brain. But lately, they've added lonely because when you're lonely, you think different and make different decisions. And so you think about I'm gonna parlay this because when we, and I was born here, but when my parents left Mexico, they got here and there was that longing for home, right? There was that longing of like our foods or seeing each other. And back then we didn't have FaceTime. We didn't have those things. We had like calling, and on Mother's Day, it was impossible to get through to Mexico. You'd have to call all day. That family value or that sense of belonging is pivotal, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first one is like food and shelter, and then
Right.
it's belonging. Like we
Right.
want to be connected. Tell me what Connect does, or tell everybody. I already know, but tell everybody else what Connect does because I even, Omar and I talk before this, but my mom is going through a lot of health issues right now, and I'm even using my I love my mom mug right now.
It's a good
Um,
plug.
and when you're faced with these moments, you start thinking about like our family and how do we conserve that or how do we make sure that we keep our traditions, keep our stories, understand what it was like for my mom to get here and make sure that we preserve those memories. So you have solved this for us.
Yeah, I'd like to think that I've started a really beautiful start to this company that is really built to focus in on celebrating our human experiences and what that looks like.
Mhm.
So if it's okay, maybe I should share like a bit more of like the organic sad parts of how Connect started, and then
Yeah,
I'll get into
of
it.
course.
So for everyone listening, it might be a little bit sad too in this one section. But I was sorry, I get emotional too.
Yep.
My grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's while I was younger in high school, and it was really hard to, at that age, understand that someone was supposed to start losing their memories and their cognitive abilities. And this person that would fly in from Puerto Rico for every holiday, every like
Yeah.
event as a kid was always present. And also like he was like my source of Puerto Rican heritage. Like he just spoke Puerto Rican, he looked Puerto Rican, like he was Puerto Rican. So for me to recognize that was going to be lost and it was already starting to happen was really hard
Yeah.
for me. And I think a lot of us can kind of relate to this next part. It was hard for me, yes, but it was harder for my mom. My mom
Yeah.
is the daughter of him. And just seeing the pain that my mom was going through and recognizing that there were unsaid discussion or unsaid
Yeah,
comments,
and the love shared, yeah, yeah.
that she didn't have a chance to like say things like, my mom moved from Puerto Rico to Chicago when she was like 18 years old. And there was
Yeah.
so much that I'm sure she was upset about. But in hindsight, as we all grew up, we all realized it's like the things that our parents did for us. And it just takes us a little bit of time to get there. Anyways, he basically asked the family to find something to help save his memories, save his history,
Mm,
legacies, messages. We did a search on the internet and we couldn't find anything that worked for our needs. And our needs were very simple, something that was
yeah.
digital, something that was multi-language because, we're Latinos. And third, something that was easy. He doesn't want to type. He's like in rural Puerto Rico. He'll use a voice note or video, but he's not going to sit and type a novel.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the only options that were available then were
Typing a
basically
novel.
a novel. He passed, and with that the emotional drain and feel and pain, and also like a little bit of scaredness that I have for my family if we develop
Mhm.
Alzheimer's or a form of dementia. That's when it all started.
And you said our people are more likely to get dementia, right?
Yes, people of color are disproportionately more affected than our counterparts to actually have a higher increase or percentage to having dementia or Alzheimer's. And it's related to so many different kinds of outliers, but overall, it's healthcare, food, connection, et cetera. The things we were kind
Mhm.
of listing in the beginning is very much related to that. Um, and now kind of bringing me into what I call an inflection point, which actually
Mhm.
correlates to the product. In the last 2 years, my friend was passing away from cancer. And what was really interesting about his passing, of course, sad and painful, but for
Yeah.
him, he was able to recognize he was passing. So to talk to someone that was my age, that was 32, and aware that he was passing at an early age, is one of the most unique experiences I'll ever have in my life that has really changed how I view life. And this person was always just talking about like the bright side of life and things he wishes he did differently, but always just being really positive about what he's done. And him, same thing. He worked at Salesforce, worked at Microsoft, a big sales tech guy. He did
Mhm.
the same thing I did when I was in high school. He looked for a product to save his memories for his wife, for his mom, things like that. And what was interesting in his case is 2 years prior, his dad died of a same cancer. So
Ah.
he was brought to doing the same search for memory saving in two situations. He
Mhm.
shared that with me, and not much longer after, I was like, "This is a sign
Yeah,
from
I'm gonna
somewhere
make
out
it.
there,
Yeah.
universe. It's like you need to quit everything you're doing and start working on solving this issue." So KINNECT is very much inspired by my grandfather going through Alzheimer's and wishing he can preserve his memories as his disease progressed, and for the family to have that recollection of him and really remember who he was before the disease took over. And the same thing for my friend who had cancer. So I have the
Yeah.
opportunity to have those conversations and messages that you want to look back on. My phone deleted some messages a couple months ago, and I cried so
No.
yeah, and I cried. I cried so hard when I was trying to look up a particular text message from him, and I couldn't find it. And again, it was while I was building KINNECT, and I really am excited for everyone else to start using the product and start using KINNECT in the way that I'm starting to hear other people use KINNECT and how
Yeah.
they're already planning for how they will use it in the
Oh,
future.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I think there's 2 things that I think about. One, there's that there's a song by Ricardo Arjona. He's talking about a girl, and he says, "Si no lo tienes, or si no lo encuentras, lo buscamos. Si no lo tienes, lo compramos. Y si no
Yep.
existe, lo inventamos." And I
Así es.
think that that's very, what you did, right? Like you knew there was a need, you looked for it, you tried to buy something, you couldn't find it, so you've created it, which to me takes a certain kind of gusto and a certain kind of brains to be able to come up with something like that. So
Y
that
también un
part,
poco loco, un
yeah,
delusional.
no, 100%. Anybody who goes out on their own to create something, I always think you have to have a little bit of adventure or just drive and also to work in corporate because I mean that's not an easy life either,
Mhm.
but I think that the fact that you found this void or this need and you're like, I'm gonna fix that. um I think that speaks to your heart, which is the second part, right? That you've loved so hard that you want to make sure that like this doesn't happen to anyone else, that someone else can hold their memories. And when I think about like my grandparents both had Alzheimer's and they on my dad's side and they passed but what was really interesting is there was something that was connecting them even when they had Alzheimer's. And I remember my grandmother and she was already 90 something and my grandfather was already 90 something more. And she said, "No sé por qué, pero le quiero dar un beso a ese hombre." And we were just like, ah, and then the Notebook came out around that time and we were just a puddle.
Yeah.
But like we know their stories for how they told them to us. And that was like our Mexico, right? And then like I was born here, so I have both cultures. And if you think about my children, I also think Connect is going to bring them back home. Like it's going to bring them back to who we are. I mean, I do it and we go down there and we visit my family. But I think if this platform has the ability not only to save memories, but to create like this cultural identity for our children.
Yeah, I really love and I love hearing how people interact or think about Connect. It's such an individual type of feeling when it comes to this product. Like,
Yeah.
yes, building it for all, but how each of us interprets the usage or feelings that come to Connect is so individual. And it's been such a beautiful product to build and having these conversations, similar to how you just opened up. But for me, I am very excited about the cultural passings. I think that is something that I have always kind of yearned for. I think growing up in the States and having my
Yeah.
parents grow up elsewhere, I think I was always like so mesmerized by their cultural upbringing and how they brought it into the States and brought it into our traditions and
Yeah.
why our Christmases are so long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much passings that I hope that as someone who wants to start a family in the next couple of years, también with my husband, I
Yeah.
hope that I can get my mom and biological father and folks to kind of start preserving their cultural things for them more than me.
It's funny. My husband's white. I think you said your husband was white too, right? So when we
He's
got
Seattle white.
married,
He's real white.
so we had a big wedding and my one of my uncles asked my husband like, "Oh, did you want a big wedding?" And he goes, "I couldn't have a big wedding if I tried." Because they don't come from a big family. But I also think, like with Connect, you can have that family tree. You can have that knowing like, the lineage and who you are. And so I do want you to talk about how to use the product and how to engage with it because I know that you've recently launched and maybe we need to have a whole nother episode, Omar, because I also think it's important to talk about like funding and making your dream a reality because like it's really nice that we're sitting here talking about it like launching. But I think those bumps in the road or like, you have to sell, you have to go out and sell, and can't have an ego because they're gonna tell you no more times. But when you get one yes, you're
Yeah.
like, boom.
I it is such a unique process. Like I knew I wanted to be a founder, but when you start thinking about that earlier on, you don't really know what it is. And now
No.
as a 32-year-old that's gone through some programs and has gone through some work, I now understand and it
Yeah.
is one of the most rewarding, tiring, and fun things of my life. I love it. But Connect, I'll go back to your question.
Yeah. It was a long question. I was like
Yeah, my bad too. Connect right now is really inspired by reminiscence therapy and inspired by life storybooks. And for
Mhm.
everyone listening, these two items have a ton of clinical value and medical value, and it's all related to the opportunity in storytelling, to going back in time, to reimagining those moments that made us us, to thinking about our parents, those good things and even the bad things. Like life is life, and there's not no one's there's no such thing as a perfect life. Even the bumps, like it's good to go back and really reflect on those bumps and how we made it through. So that form of like realization and talking and talk therapy almost, right? Those are the
Yeah.
elements that we're kind of building and bringing into Connect and really encouraging the user. And how we're doing it is we've built about 20 of these what we call storybooks.
Mhm.
Storybooks, I like to call them like organized captures.
Yeah.
And what they allow the person to do is pick a theme, and then they have 5 chapters to answer. They have questions in it, and they can answer in audio, video, or text, and also upload
Wow.
content. And when they finish their little book, their little chapter there, it gets shared to anyone that they've invited into their private invite only family groups. So what's beautiful about that, to your point earlier, is that chain of command, that passing
Mhm.
of information. Because for me, when I invite my entire family and my friends into the thing, they get to invite their family and their friends and their kids, right? And it just becomes this like legacy lineage builder.
Community.
They have to,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, storybooks is really encouraged by people wanting to capture parts of their lives, pero they don't know what to say, and
Right.
they don't know what questions to answer or where to save it. Like it's really
Yeah.
hard. It's really, really hard to do it. So we kind of looked at tons of research and met with tons of folks and built that first product to kind of resemble that book feature.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And so we are signing up, and which is really cool that I didn't know you could just share it to everybody because we even have like our, like we have our Los Suarez Facebook page, and then I have my primos and primas WhatsApp groups. And I think there's an opportunity to bring it all together and maybe even clean up a little bit. I also like the idea of, like how I remember one story may be very different than how someone else remembered the story, and
That's my
so
favorite
it'll be
one.
nice yeah, to see everyone's storybook will be very, interesting, and, you talk about, like, remembering the good times and the bad times. My parents had their 51st wedding anniversary this year in June, and, my mom, when we drive down, Randolph Street, she always says, "Aquí venía en un taxi con tu papá cuando me dio el primer beso hace 53 años," and I'm just like, I love that. I need to remember that spot because it means something.
Yeah, I feel like you should get her to record that on your phone or in Connect. But I think there's something
Yeah,
really beautiful about the way she says that too, right? That tone of
yeah,
like, just so you know, and that
yeah.
Spanish that we all, it's that very special feeling of what I really am excited about for Connect is that like that language, that tone of
Yeah,
voice that we love from our friends and family that we only know when you know. It's like a lot of
yeah,
time it's
yeah,
like
100%.
memory voice. So
Omar, te deseamos mucho éxito. Like, we know that this is something that our community needed. I applaud you for taking a step forward and doing it for us. We'll have the link to find Connect, or do you wanna share the website?
yeah, it's KINNECT Connect dot club CLUB. That's it.
Hey, cool. So you guys can join the club, start your family tree, or start your storybooks that people can just add on to them, and that way we could conserve another piece of our cultura. And when you think about like our culture and our friendship and our family, something that you started out at the beginning, you said it is very personal, right? So it's one person's experience. When we share it with others, then it becomes a shared experience, and then it becomes a cultural norm. So I think, that it's
Yeah.
beautiful, and I I can already picture my aunts putting all their medical advice up, and like, you should have a disclaimer on there.
Oh,
Like
hey, I haven't thought about the VIX idea. I need to figure out how to put that. The family secrets of health.
Yeah. But Thank you. And you know what? I'm going to make sure that we check in with you and that you and I stay close so that we could see you continue to succeed. If you are using Connect, if you go and sign up and start this, if you have any feedback, give it to Omar because he can only make it better. And you already know the owner of the company. So what better way to start?
And the email for that is super easy. It's omar@kinnect.club. Like,
Oh,
pretty
boom.
simple. Yeah, my email if you ever need me.
Perfect, perfect. Mucho éxito, and thank you so much, Omar, for being on here and for sharing everything you've shared with us. I love your personal journey. I think you're so young, you got a big runway, so, we're gonna see a lot of you.
Oh, gracias, Natalie. Thank you for everyone listening in and supporting. This is awesome. Thank you for having me. It's a true honor.
Thank you, and tune into us next time on Corporate Cafecito.